Was I wrong about BMW? Am I gonna have to swallow my pride? I mean, was I wrong about my BMW 35D X5 there that had some problems at the end of its life, but it had thousands of great traveling miles? Was I wrong about my BMW 335 that had that N54 and it had a few problems along the way? Was I wrong about a lot of the comments that I've been making about BMW along the way? Comments related to, mechanical failures and breakdowns and leaks and oil and coolant, and the list goes round and around. Was I wrong? The more I've been thinking about the situation, and this is very, very hard for me to do, it's like anybody, it's hard for you to deep down dig and basically see the fact that, and admit to the fact that you may be wrong about some things in life. You make decisions, you have ideas, you portray those ideas, and it's not always right. It's not always right. And quite frankly, this could be one of those moments. Now, as time has gone on in the last little while here, I've been exposing myself more and more. I've been getting more time behind the wheel of some modern day late model BMWs that are maybe a year old, 3 years old, 5, 7, 8, 10 years old. And there's a lot of different options out there on the market. BMW's been putting out a lot of products. The question is, are the products better than what I let them up to be? I mean, clearly, if you've been following the channel, I've been a little rough on the brand. And in some cases, it's deserved, and in other cases, maybe I'm a little bit harsh. I've always stood by it from a perspective of integrity and truly believe everything that I talk about. But BMW has been changing a little bit. And I have to talk about that, is everybody worth a second chance? Was I truly wrong about my assessment and the brand's quality in recent years? One car that I had a lot of time behind the wheel was a vehicle like this. We have the X2, and it's got the infamous B48 engine. And after spending some time behind the wheel for long term, I actually had one for almost a good part of a summer last year, I've come to the realization that the technology is there, the car feels well put together, and the engine was bulletproof. I had no issues. I didn't have to add oil for long-term use. There was no hiccups. There was no check engine lights. I'd constantly be looking for opportunities to exploit issues, but there were none. Was I wrong in taking a run at some of the new design themes that BMW has been putting out? I mean, here we have an X7, and clearly it has quite an oversized grille. Maybe that's, it's a choice, a personal choice, and while some people love it, others don't, and that's okay. So that just becomes more of a matter of choice and not remaining stagnant. So was I wrong in becoming harsh towards my attitudes the way some of those modern day BMWs look? Here we have some more. And was I wrong in going hard about the bucktooth grille, the look, the design, the grille of these modern day 4 Series BMWs? To be honest, they're starting to grow on me. They really are. I think they're unique, and that's part of the actual point of the car, is to change it up so it doesn't constantly look the same over and over and become rehashed. As popular as the old traditional kidney grille is, it's rehashed over and over. Was I wrong in nitpicking the latest M cars? I mean, I literally had a long-term loaner M4 competition, same color scheme as this one, a few short years back. I had it long-term. The local dealer lent it to me in good faith, and I used it, and I made lots of content, and quite frankly, the car lived up and actually exceeded all of my expectations. The engine, the S55 that you found in the older generation, was bulletproof too. Didn't put oil in it, didn't have to check any coolant problems, and that car wasn't bang on. It was essentially a demo, and it had some miles on it, but the thing was rock steady. Was I wrong in taking a run at BMW's reliability? Was I there? Well, I mean, I chose to drive 3 of the most problematic engines in the BMW lineup. Now, granted, The engines in the vehicles I owned were never known for reliability, but they had a purpose. The N54 was that twin turbo straight six. BMW brought that out. It was the first generation, the first year of doing that. Yes, it had teething problems. And I knew that. Watched the forums, I read about it, and it lived up to expectations. Then I bought, well, not before that, I bought the E60 M5, which has that glorious S85, the V10. And was I wrong in buying that, or was I wrong in the assessment of that car? No, but I pretty much knew what I was getting into, and it kind of falls in line with any other high performance, high strung, naturally aspirated engine. You drive a Ferrari, a Lamborghini daily, you're going to see wear and tear. You're going to see problems. Yeah, if you wrap it up and you only put 1,500 kilometers a year, you probably won't see that many issues with the M5 either. But when you start to convert that to a daily driver, then you'll probably start exposing some of the weaknesses from a durability standpoint, not from a driver's excitement standpoint, but certainly reliability. Was I wrong in saying that those cars clearly weren't that reliable? I don't know. They're not that reliable, but they weren't trying to be. They were trying to come up with F1 technology. And then I also bought an X5 35D. And I said before, that vehicle was bulletproof for the first 8 years that we owned it. We actually ran it up to almost 240,000 kilometers. And yes, we had some issues along the way, which I shared on the channel. But a lot of them were emissions. And a lot of it's due to the extremely harsh conditions here in northern Canada. And if you were to drive that vehicle down in, say, more moderate states, you'd probably see less of the issues that I experienced, because a lot of it was the diesel exhaust fluid acting up, the tank freezing, and that was the beginning of the end for a lot of the problems. But was I wrong in signing off on that car? We got many miles on that vehicle that were undisturbed and with no problems. Now, if I didn't let the bias of those unreliable engines in my field actually get the best of me, and I kept my eyes more wide open, I would probably see that BMW's been making amazing strides on their 4 and 6 cylinder engines. But was I wrong in signing off on the rest of the brand, knowing full well? I didn't know full well, not consciously, but I had such an experience with some of the other engines that I owned personally that has sort of influenced and biased me, biased my thoughts and opinions. But was I wrong in dismissing the fact that BMW has now cranked their way up on consumers' reports? And the argument can certainly be made for reliability, but they're up there with Toyota, Lexus, Honda, Mazda. Yes, BMW is up there. They're no longer in the same space as vehicles like Range Rover, Land Rover, or even the Alphas. Now, was I also wrong in dismissing what my wife was saying, that she still always loves BMW and always had? And arguably, we can go back to the beginning of time, because I owned a 318 Ti. Then I also owned a 320. And both those cars were religiously good, relatively reliable, and we didn't put a lot of money into them. And they just drove. And we put a lot of miles. We drove to the coast, all over the countryside, daily used them. They were pretty bulletproof. We rarely had check engine lights. We had a couple issues with the thermostat, but quite frankly, those cars were actually very sturdy. So my wife clearly still to this day believes that BMW is still one of the best brands. And now, after spending enough time around my wife, having those conversations, driving, and my experiences with some late model BMWs, I'm starting to see a bit of a shift. And my attitudes are shifting. And as much as I hate to admit this, I have to take my pride and take one in the couillons over the fact that BMW has been making improvements. The reliability has been getting better, particularly on their mainstream vehicles. Yes, there's still some problem engines. And believe me, going forward, I will be brutally honest. You know, the early first generation of the N63 was a dud. And that doesn't change. Now, it also had some positive attributes. It was a great performer, and, you know, put down the numbers, and it was a great engine from a driver's standpoint. So that was the compromise. Was I wrong in standing sturdy and saying I'll never buy another BMW? That's a hard statement. Again, my wife clearly loves the brand. And I'd be lying if I say I didn't love the way they drive. As a matter of fact, we still have the E60 M5. It still only has 58,000 kilometers on it, and I still don't plan on getting rid of it anytime soon. So am I softening up on this whole topic about not buying another BMW? So was I wrong about all the durability issues with BMW? Clearly things looked a lot better. That X2 that I drove last year and I owned for the good part of the summer had no durability issues. The trim was solid. The tech actually worked flawlessly, as opposed to we had a Tesla as well, and that one had glitches. The BMW was flawless. It feels like a lot of the BMWs have their bugs worked out before it hits the actual racetrack, before it actually hits the dealership. And when I mean bugs, I mean largely technical, electronic. Those bugs feel well dialed in, and the quality of the equipment and the programming feels like it's on par with the best of the best. So was I wrong in assuming that they had nothing to offer? Was I also wrong to assume that no other manufacturers or brands ever have problems? Well, sometimes you get caught up in this glorified conversation about the fact that some of these other brands do it so well, do it so perfectly. But what I've been experiencing lately is even some of the best cars in some of the Japanese brands, for example, Toyota and Honda, they have their hiccups too. We've recently had some experience with our Honda Civic. The brakes feel fragile and they bung up regularly. They actually seize up. It feels like that's a weakness in there. It feels like the integrity of some of the hardware is a little bit weak and flimsy. As well, we know Honda has the soy wiring, so we know there will be problems there, and there's been lots of well-documented conversations around that. And Hondas don't have the best automatic transmissions, especially when you go CVT. But this isn't about bashing Honda. Honda is spectacularly good because they do so many things really well, and I will never give up on a brand like that because even if they have failures, they're cheap to fix. They're easy to manage and cost effective. So if something breaks, you go down there, it's a fraction of the cost of some of these luxury brands. But maybe that's a perspective that we sort of lose at time to time, where we assume that, nothing breaks, life's good, it's all good. But the reality is everything breaks. Toyota, we've had glitches there. Our new Camry, we've had problems with the infotainment system. Now, the rest of the body panels feel okay and they're holding up just fine. But we also know they're now using an electric water pump following in BMW's suit. We know that BMW has improved on that. They figured out there was a little gap, a little weakness in some of their issues or some of their hardware. So even BMW knows when to make those changes. So they've now gone to mechanical water pumps on some of their turbo engines and their Turbo 6, Turbo 4s. They realized that the electronic or electric water pumps were pricey and problematic. And even BMW, they moved on. So some of the problems I experienced were more related not so much to the cars as it was to what I believe is more in the servicing side and the service network and the way they sort of get you wrangled in there. And honestly, I let that experience emotionally swing me to a point where then I sort of had this issue with BMW. But in reality, most of the cars are actually quite sturdy. And a lot of my anxiety and stress over the company came really more service, where I had a problem and I had to take it in. And then it was diagnosed and I was told that I had to spend $5,000-$6,000 to fix it because we had a firing module for the igniters or the injectors on the X5, but it wasn't for sure that was the fix. And then I also had to do the DEF tank at the same time because that split and it was minus 30 out. And it was a very stressful moment and he felt like there was no way out of this aside from towing the vehicle home. And now I felt like I was suckered into a situation where I couldn't get out of paying a bill of $7,000 or $8,000. That's a reality. Now, I had all this animosity towards the service, but honestly, a lot of that is just what it is. That's the expectation when you're buying a luxury vehicle of any kind. Not just BMW, it could be any of the premium brands. You got to expect if something fails, it might cost you some money, and it's not going to be Toyota money. Lexus isn't that cheap either. Lexus does have a reliability built in, but now Lexus, I do believe, is going to continue their durability. However, even Lexus now is finally starting to play the games that BMW's playing. And when I say that, They're actually going into turbocharging. So they're replacing what we knew as the ultra reliable, the uber reliable 3.5 liter V6, and they're swapping that out now in all their models, and they're putting now a turbo 4-cylinder engine. So now they're doing what BMW has essentially done, but they're doing it 5, 7, 8 years, 10 years later than BMW. So time will tell, but as soon as you start putting on turbos and heat, we might be challenging reliability or knocking on the door of problems. We'll see. But the bottom line is, could I have in fact been wrong about BMW? Yes, I hate to say this, folks. Not brutally wrong, because those problems still exist in the N54s and the N63s and the N20s and N57s. We know some of those problems exist. But if you look up in history, you'll probably find every manufacturer has problem areas. And some of those areas come, and some of those problems come as a result of innovation, improved performance. And so the question really is more of, can you take the compromise of performance a little more, can you take the compromise of performance with a little more influence on performance and a little less on reliability? Or are you just straight out reliability and I'll sacrifice everything for the driving experience? I don't care. I just want something A to B. Well, I do truly believe that here's the scoop. I believe I could have been wrong. An M5 E60 is not a vehicle that you should be daily driving. But neither is a Ferrari 430, neither is a Lamborghini Aventador, neither are any of those high performance engines. So instead, you make the selection of vehicle based on your needs. So yes, I may have been wrong. A vehicle like this little X2 is a great daily vehicle. It's running an economical, reliable, this little B48 engine. Now, I hate to admit it, folks, is as reliable or more so than some of the vehicles you're finding on the other side of the pond. So, in fact, my experience has been B48, the B58, the 4 and 6 cylinder engines are absolutely crushing it in BMW land right now. So was I wrong in dismissing the brand? Will you, in fact, see me in another BMW again in the future? Time will tell. I think they have a lot to offer. I do think they've made some big mistakes in the past, and I won't let them forget that. However, BMW might have a place in the garage. We will see. Big part of it is my wife's influence. A big part of it is my experience behind the wheel of some late model BMWs. And we also know that historically the problems aren't showing. We're not seeing the same severity, the same frequency of problems that we've seen in older generation cars like the N20 and the B47s and all kinds of other different engines and drivetrains that have shown problems. We just don't see that anymore. They're cookie cutting engines. Yeah, sure. Maybe it's a little watered down. The B48 and the B58, they're putting in everything from 3, 4, 5 series cars, some of the X models, even the M engines, the S63s, and some of those engines, the S55s, a lot of them are getting stamped in multiple models, which maybe tends to make them feel just slightly less special. But the trade-off is more durability because they're in more models, there's more seat time, and chances are they're better, the bugs are worked out. So was I wrong? I still don't believe they're more reliable than cars like Lexus. Nobody beats Lexus at the crown for reliability. However, I think they're close. And I think now BMW has come a long ways in terms of durability, and we may have to take another closer look. So the channel, again, please forgive me, but the bottom line is all vehicles have something to offer. BMW has made a decision to consciously to improve on durability while still maintaining that driver essence. Sure, they've given up the manuals, but that ZF8 speed is amazing, and BMW has come a long ways for their overall reliability. And honestly, time will tell, but maybe I was wrong.